Welcome back to From A to Built. I'm Bryson Rayome here with my co-host Chris James. Today we're talking about a place that needs no introduction. It's the famous Rose Bowl Stadium in Pasadena, one of the most iconic venues in the world. Over 100 years of history, hosting 5 Super Bowls, 3 Olympics, multiple World Cups, and concerts creating generations of memories for fans across California, the US, and beyond. But what's fascinating to us is what most people don't see, and that's what it takes to operate, preserve, and improve a historic stadium like the Rose Bowl while still keeping it relevant for the next 100 years. To help unpack this, we're joined by 2 people who are right at the center of shaping its future. First is Dedan Brozino, president of the Rose Bowl Legacy Foundation. Dedan is leading the effort to build long-term philanthropic support to ensure the Rose Bowl continues to thrive as a world-class venue and civic asset. We're also joined by Doolittle, the general manager of the Rose Bowl Stadium. Derek oversees the operations and strategy behind running one of the most historic and active venues in America, balancing modern fan expectations with the responsibility of protecting a true landmark. Today, we're going to talk about the legacy of the Rose Bowl, what it really is as an institution, some little-known facts about its history, and the vision for what comes next. Let's get into it. Guys, let's jump right in here. Derek and Dedan, thank you so much for joining Chris and I on From A to Built. We're excited to have you here. So we're just going to jump right into some of these fun questions. And when I think about the Rose Bowl, I think of this amazing institution. I mainly think of football games. I think about all the fun sports that go on there. But really, back up a little bit from just football for Rose Bowl. What is the Rose Bowl as just an institution? What is it year-round for Pasadena and for the world outside of just football?
I mean, I think from the jump, it's a point of civic pride, right? Mm-hmm. Pasadena, a community of, what is it, 135,000 to 140,000 residents. It's not many communities in the country or world that can say that they have an icon like the Rose Bowl Stadium, quite frankly, in their backyard. Mm-hmm. So I think the benefit that it provides to the city of Pasadena and its residents is something that doesn't get talked about enough. And as you hinted there, so much more than football. It's easy to think about the Rose Bowl game in January 1st and sunset on the San Gabriels, which is no doubt part of its icon, part of its signature. But we were just in a meeting earlier today talking about some of the other events that might not jump to the front of the page, like Pokémon GO.
Yeah.
Right? Pokémon GO.
Nice.
The revolution that started some time ago and finds people walking around at random, crossing roads all over the place.
Do they do it in the stadium?
They do it everywhere. Everywhere.
That's awesome.
Everywhere, Chris. We had our, I think, 3rd rendition of Pokémon GO just a couple of weekends ago in February. And it was incredible because they take over the stadium, they take over the concourse, they take over the golf course, and you get thousands of people. And what's most inspiring about that event to me is that it's individuals who would not be interacting with the Rose Bowl Stadium or Brookside Golf Course if it weren't for the event. Mm-hmm. And I think that, to me, underscores the importance of the Rose Bowl Stadium. We are not just football. We're not just major soccer matches. We're not just major concerts and music events, so we are that too. Mm-hmm. But we're a rallying point for cultural and recreational activities for anybody, anywhere.
That's amazing. Yeah, I have a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, so I'm very familiar with the Pokemon Go situation, them wandering out into the street trying to find Pokemon.
Seriously.
So that's interesting. And then, speaking of all these amazing events and what the Rose Bowl is, what's unique about operating? I mean, is it a 100-year-old facility at this point?
What is it?
103,
Good.
103 and a half-ish.
Yeah. So a 103-year-old facility and doing these top-tier sporting events, concerts, cultural events. What is unique about that? How are you seeing expectations change right now around stadiums, and what are some of the challenges of operating?
Derek touched upon, hey, we're not just football anymore. Like it is, there is a really quantifiable cool factor that people might just know us for Pokemon or the flea market. And I think, as we reflect with our teams day in and day out, and then we're just a team of 45 or so staff members, but on a major event day, we're a small city. So when you reflect back on what that means, while we were built for football 103 years ago, protecting an icon does not necessarily mean freezing it in time. 1920s infrastructure does not meet 2026 expectations. So that means having Pokemon out on the golf course. It means leaning into our flea market or expanding our music festival business. So I think when you talk about operating a 103 years young venue, you still have to take care of those core elements, the football, the musical events that kind of built the foundation of the house. But now you're adding a third story to the house, the fourth story to the house. And to be able to trust your staff with that dynamic, evolutionary, almost daily blank canvas creative mindset is, I think, been really fun for Derek and I to be a part of a team like that. Because 3 years ago, we weren't talking about executing a Pokemon GO event and finding a digital Pikachu and all this good stuff. But, I have an 11 and a 14-year-old as well, so similar ages to yours. They don't care that we play football on January 1st down there, but they want to know when that Pikachu event's going to be, right? So I think, just being open and honest, just like anything in life, right? When you're developing new relationships, you're developing new, growing your network, you start a new job, you got to be open-minded about everything. And I feel like our staff has really embraced the fact that we can't have blinders on to continue to evolve and step into to what we continue to do, because these newer venues around Los Angeles and around the country, love them, hate them, indifferent about them, whatever, it doesn't matter. They're brand new, a lot of them, and they have new technologies, and they have new guts, and they have new. They don't need a private 501c3 to raise money for them. They don't answer to a city council. Those are all uniquenesses that I think we embrace and are proud of, because it's made us uniquely ours. Every time there's an event at the Rose Bowl, it is somebody's first time there, and it doesn't matter if it's that January 1st game or Pokemon. So how do we make that person feel? And I think, as we look at how you continue to operate to modern expectations, it's being ready for what people expect. And that hasn't changed since 1922. And that's being fun and available and safe and ready to go, regardless of what the painting is for that day.
And what does that look like right now when you talk about, okay, we've got this beautiful historic stadium, but we know we have to modernize. Just that's what's happening. So how do you respect that historic heritage and bring in a little bit of that modernization? What are some key things that you're thinking about right now where you're like, all right, we have to do this for the stadium, right? We have to modernize these pieces of it. And then how do you work around the historical pieces when you're doing that?
Yeah, I think obviously the historical, certainly designation of the venue is something that we take very seriously and is incredibly important to us day in and day out as we're ideating upon what these amenities are that we need to make sure that we continue to infuse into the stadium to maintain its vibrancy that it's had for so long. Whether that be improved cell phone service, right? Sometimes it's the basic amenities that prove to be the most challenging to bring to this area, especially, by the way, not only is it 103 years old, it's nestled into this idealistic neighborhood and down in an arroyo. And so when you talk about things like cell phone connectivity and different pieces like that, that are modern day expectations, it's something that we're continuously strategizing upon with our carrier groups and whatnot. And they continue to step up to the plate and answer the bell relative to making sure we have the latest and greatest at this moment of 5G technology in the venue. But different pieces such as, I think we live in a market, especially where expectations of patrons are to come into a premium experience, no matter where they are in a venue. So we continue to ideate upon what's the next premium splash that we put into a venue. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about our ongoing project right now in the south end zone, but whether that be there or the future of just general patron seating, how do we improve that as well? And again, just make sure we're leveraging certainly what's great about our venue. And a big part about what's great about our venue are all of the performers that have come through the doors and all of the football teams that have played, just these games that are so memorable and have touched decades upon decades of families along the way.
Just to take a step back, I think it would be helpful for the audience if we could just rattle through all the types of events that are hosted at the Rose Bowl.
Whoa.
It's just Pokemon Go and then some football games.
Because there's also, there's the golf.
Yeah, the list goes on and on. Dedan, clean me up here.
Is it even possible to list it all?
Let's give it a try.
Because I don't think the
Let's
public
give it a
really
try.
knows.
Yeah.
Well, you've probably heard about the January 1st football game and the Rose Bowl game. A lot of college football that certainly happens inside the stadium. World-class soccer. We host FIFA Club World Cup just last year. We have a friendly coming up between Mexico and Australia here in May as they make their final tune-ups for the World Cup event taking place this summer. Music events, our music product has become so wide-ranging, whether that be your traditional concert inside the stadium, whether that be your music events or music festivals that get activated on the golf course with our partner there, Golden Voice. Flea Market, the second Sunday of every month. You can't miss that. Walks, runs, community events, banquets. I mean, you name it. I don't know. I don't know how far I can go.
I think, and the flea market effect's real. Like people talk about the Target effect. Like you go to the flea market, spend $140 easy.
Yeah.
You come home with a nice beat up license plate, all these good things. But I think, the stadium, we're allowed 25, we call them displacement events, 25 displacement events of about 20,000 or more people per event. That's your big football games, your soccer matches, your concerts, your music festivals. And then we do about 200 enterprise events below that number every year. And that could be anything from a podcast recording, a board meeting, a staff meeting, a pop-up Target store when they're launching a rain boot, whatever it might be. But I think historically, we've really built the right to take on more. So we talked about how we were born to host one football game a year, one event per year. And now we're in the hundreds of events if you want to quantify everything. We've had 5 Super Bowls. The last Super Bowl we had was the birth of the modern day halftime show, Michael Jackson in '93. We had John Madden's Super Bowl. We still have the largest Super Bowl ever attended in 1980 with the Steelers and the Rams. We've had 2 World Cups, 94, 99, the 99 Women's World Cup. A lot of people consider to be as big, if not bigger than Title IX and what it did for women's athletics in the United States and the inspiration there. And then we're coming up to our 3rd Olympic Games in 2028. And Derek and I sit here very proudly on behalf of our staff and everybody that's come before us that we are the only venue on planet Earth as we spin today that has had 3 Olympic Games and 2 World Cups, soon to be 3 Olympic Games and World Cups. And that's a pretty tall order, right? And then, but yet you go back to your earlier question where there's a whole generation that knows us for other things. Yeah. And that's a really neat place to be as we evolve through the world that we're in. I think from a community perspective, we're owned by the city of Pasadena. So the residents are the owners. The residents are our direct reports, so to speak. And being able to see the venue utilized, though, for things that benefit the community. Derek talked about, the Arroyo Seco. We're on an almost 300-acre property. That's right. It's a huge property. And it's one of the most active daily recreation spaces in all of LA County, which is the most populated county in America. So one could argue that it's maybe the most active daily recreation space in the country, or one of the. That's a really cool impression to have, right? But using that space around the stadium, using the acreages, not just the golf course and the stadium, but the loop around the Rose Bowl. Bringing in different charities, whether that's the MS Society or American Heart Association. We have these different charities that come through, and the stadium property generates over $10 million a year for outside nonprofits, which is probably not talked about enough. So it truly is a community venue. And I think, as we look at what we want the story to be after Derek and I and our colleagues are long gone, it's always about the brand. It's the brand first. But, we take a lot of pride in the fact that we continue to evolve and be nimble each and every day to cater to whatever that modern day fan may want, whether it is the 5G or whether it's accessibility because they want to participate in, a humane society dog walk. That we have to answer the bell for all people.
Yeah. You guys do a great job.
Thanks.
Whenever I visit the Rose Bowl, it really does feel like a family atmosphere. Yeah. It really because that ethos is enthused in the place. But Derek, I remember when we first walked the field together, and just with everything you're talking about, Dedan, it really, the word that comes to mind is a cathedral.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I was actually watching the Netflix documentary about the Dallas Cowboys and that Super Bowl that they played against, I think it was the Buffalo Bills here at the Rose Bowl. And I still remember Michael Irvin talking about walking into the stadium and feeling like he got hit with just like a wall of noise. Like he's never experienced anything like that in his whole life. So just like the power of the venue, the space, the way it's laid out, it's just something that's like an incredible classic. So everything you guys are doing is amazing.
You see it often with major performers that come through, and Derek, you and I haven't aligned on this, but I'm certain it's probably true. The amount of stories that we hear from fans, from performers, from celebrities, you name it, people are very childlike when they talk about the place. It's like Christmas morning, and there are not two stories that align in the same word for word. People might be there on the same day.
Yeah.
Like we hear a lot about the '06 Texas USC game, one of the best college football games ever. We have not heard two of the same story out of that day, even though we've met hundreds of people that have been there. And I think as you think through, whether it's the Michael Irvin reference you made to the Netflix documentary, Taylor Swift made a pause after her second song back in like 2018 when she was playing concert. And I remember I was next to a staff member, and you thought the sound had gone out in the venue. You thought we were having audio issues. And it was just Taylor kind of taking a moment to herself in between songs 2 and 3. And she verbalized and she said, hey, like, I get it now. I get why this place is so special.
Yeah.
And it was like almost like it hit her after coming out of the gate with these 2 songs. Chesney had the same thing. When it takes people of that caliber that are in those venues around the world at the ultimate magnitude, standing on a catwalk in front of tens of thousands of people, that Derek and I haven't gotten that call yet, by the way, to go do that. But when you take those types of people and it becomes very basic to them why a place like that continues to persevere and be special to many different demographics around the globe, it's hard to wrap that into something to explain, you know.
Well, and I think I have chills here just as you went through that list, and it's some of the smaller stories too that give me chills every day. It's a family from Nebraska who's just kind of happening through Pasadena, and they show up at the gate and they want to come in and see the venue, and they ask you to take them to section 21, row 67, seat 101. And just to stand there for a moment and say, my grandfather brought me here in the 1960s or whatever. And just the memories that have endured the test of time. And, I often say one of the, we talked about the historic nature of the venue a little bit ago. And, the historic nature of the venue makes it really challenging to operate too, by the way. But it's also, it's just not a throwaway venue, right? In an era where a venue is built to last probably more than 25, 30 years, but you don't see major venues like the Rose Bowl endure for more than 25, 30 years anymore. And so there's not many venues in the country or even world that you can evoke that kind of emotion from, that raw emotion of this event that occurred in 1960 or this event that occurred in 1932 or whatever it may be. And we're one of them. That's what, quite frankly, jazzes me up every day about the responsibility that we have to make sure that, as you said, generations from now, when we've come and passed, this place is still as vibrant as ever.
Yeah.
Yankees.
I loved your comment on cathedral because it's that feeling of, if you walk into a cathedral in Rome and you just have that moment. Yeah. But it's crazy to think you can get that from a stadium in Pasadena.
That's right.
That same feeling and that scale. But that's really what it is. And I love how you glossed over, Derek. It's kind of hard to operate a historical facility. It's insanely hard. Like our business is renovating historical facilities, and that is extremely difficult operating within those constraints of 100-year-old plumbing and HVAC and just the structural, everything about it is harder than people know.
Yeah.
And so we know that there's just constant work going on. And now that we've built this up and everyone knows you guys are the stewards of making everything happen, what are your top priorities over the next kind of 24 months for the stadium when you're looking out, 2-3 years? What do you guys, what's top priority for you?
Yeah, I think as we look in the short term here, it's, I mentioned it earlier, but bringing on board the South End Zone Improvement Project. They were actually 2 months into construction on right now, set to complete at the end of July and open up on September 12th for the UCLA Bruins' first home game. But wow, the process to get us to the start line there and make sure that we're doing it in a thoughtful and intentional manner. That's one thing that I think for us, we have to focus on a little bit more than most venues, is just being thoughtful and intentional in everything we do. Whether that's a traffic route down to the stadium because of that neighborhood that we're nestled into, or entering the stadium gates because it's just an older venue. So thoughtfulness, intentionality, but no, opening that south end zone club is going to be such a shot in the arm, I think, for the venue, and maintaining all of its historical properties and really thoughtfully nestling this premium experience down into the seating bowl. Quite frankly, the first time it's ever been done is a priority for us there. I think refining operational procedures as we motor towards the LA 28 games. That's going to be here. Golly, I guess in about 24 months. So that's kind of on the horizon.
We should start planning.
Talked about.
LA should start planning. That's a great idea.
This is a good idea. Just don't bring your cars. Car-free Olympics. But no, that's upon us, right? And so, the team's been hard at work with LA 28 organizing group, the local organizing group here, to make sure we're ready. We're really excited. We're playing soccer matches. We know that we're going to be the home of the men's and women's gold medal games for soccer, which is super exciting for us. And soccer's kind of what we do. So we're lucky in that sense. We're not a venue that has to turn itself into a track or turn itself into a pool. We get to do what we do best, but there's great responsibility when it comes to that. The standards of security and the standards of infrastructure that are required to put on a worldly event of that magnitude, preparing yourself to bring in dignitaries from all over the world. It has evolved since the last Olympic Games that were hosted here in 1984 as well. So making sure we're prepared for that, I think, is a significant priority for us. But really, too, just as Dean talked about, all of those events that we're hosting continuously is making sure that we're continuing to evolve from a standpoint of what's next, right? What's the next cultural or recreational phenomenon that's going to come about that we need to be on the cutting edge to make sure that we're prepared to accept, another generation of event that's going to come through the stadium's gate.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, do you want to expand upon that a little bit? Because I remember when you first talked to us about the South End Zone and some of the other stadium improvements, there was this idea of, making sure that everyone understands how the Rose Bowl is the best in class. And it's like, it's up there with SoFi and AT&T Stadium and all these other great technological marvels.
No question. And to that point, making sure that everybody understands, when they're coming through the gates, it's not just the premium features that we're trying to bring into the 21st century while maintaining our historical integrity, of course. By the way, we have a lot of other projects on the docket that Dedan and his team are going gangbusters at raising money for, whether that be the replacement of all of the fixed seating in the bowl, those being the east and west side seats, to bring that, not necessarily a experience with premium amenities, but giving everybody that feel of being in a seat that's super comfortable. And this isn't to rag on us in any means, of course, but it's challenging. It can be challenging going to an event and you're seated in seat 30 and you're kind of crawling across, saying excuse me, thank you 29 times to get to your seat. So we're really excited for that project that's going to totally revamp the east and west seats. That's also when you talk about the historical nature of our venue and the rake of our bowl and the ellipse of our bowl, and maintaining the integrity of what makes that so special, while infusing an improvement like that into it. That's going to give the design team fits. But we hope, as we finish out this South End Zone project, really get into the planning phases of a project like that, as we turn the calendar year into 2027, as well as, of course, we have our eyes set on a new video board product on the north side of the venue, replacing the existing video board with a large format screen stretching, upwards of 250 feet wide or so, maintaining a low profile as to make sure that we're still giving all of the patrons that incredible view of the San Gabriel mountain range when they're seated in the seating bowl. that too has its historical challenges when you think about one of the historical properties, which is the rim of the stadium. So we actually can't do anything that impacts the rim of the stadium, which is kind of wild when you look on the west side in the Terry Donahue Pavilion that was built a little over a decade ago now, and it looks like it's built onto the stadium. But if you look closely, that thing is paper clipped onto the stadium. It's not even touching the rim of the stadium. So you consider a project like a video board replacement on the north side, where we're probably going to have to cantilever a product in and over the rim of the bowl so that we maintain that historical property. Again, just being thoughtful, being intentional. Every moment of every day, every improvement we're talking about, every operational procedure we're talking about how it certainly impacts the venue, maintains historical statuses, impacts our neighborhood when we start talking about operational impacts and different pieces like that too.
Yeah. I think we've mentioned historic stadiums now for a couple different responses. I think Derek's mentioning of intentional is hugely important, because the most harmful, expensive thing we could ever do to the Rose Bowl is we pass it on to that next generation and a bunch of people we will never meet or see that need to enjoy it the way that we've all enjoyed it. The most expensive, harmful thing we could ever do is to do nothing. And to be intentional stewards of this and lean on our core tenants like UCLA and the Tournament of Roses and our music partners. These aren't just things that we got together as a staff and put a blindfold on and reach into a hat and pull it out and say, hey, let's do a field club. Like there's a ton of intentionality behind that, but there's also intentionality on maintaining our National Historic Landmark status. We're one of 4 major stadiums nationally out of those 2,600, 2,700 historic landmarks in the whole database, and there used to be more. Yeah. We're aware that there used to be more, and that plaque and that right got stripped away from those venues. And some of those venues now, people can go Google what they were, but some of those venues now are getting torn down. They don't exist anymore, or they're moving out of state, or they're moving out of market, or whatever it might be. So we are keenly aware of what we need to do, and we've aligned ourselves with some really strategic and smart historical partners, both in the Pasadena community and nationally, that study and know these things to kind of help protect us and run interference for us and tell us, hey guys, you can't do that, but you can do this. Yeah. Because the last thing we want to do in any of these intentional projects while we work and think of the patron and how we can best take care of their experience and elevate their experience in year 103, 104 and beyond is risk that National Historic Landmark status, because that's a huge reason our heartbeat is as strong as it is nationally. So it is a weird, delicate balance. So you almost are forced into this period of intentionality that you never get out of. And I think that's made us really, really good at what we do and thoughtful at what we do, and allows us to just keep the same strong partners in the huddle that want to see the same for the Rose Bowl Stadium moving forward, not just in this moment of the 28 Olympic Games.
It also forces me every day to understand that patience is a virtue.
I was going to say,
amen.
Bang your head against the wall. I mean, that kind of leads into my next question. Again, we have a background in historical renovations. We know the difficulties, and I think there's a lot of misconceptions around what it takes to do anything within these facilities. Anything.
Sure.
You want to move a door over. It's like, well, we gotta go through a process to make sure that door can be moved to a certain area. So what does any regular project look like, and what are some of the hurdles that you have to go through? Because I think that's a lot of people, we take it for granted we're in the industry, but I don't think a lot of people understand the lengths that you go to and the groups that you coordinate with to make sure that iconic stadium stays a historical landmark. Yeah. So run us through kind of some of those fun experiences.
You probably got a whole dog pile to pick from on that one.
Well, I'll oversimplify it here. Three of the key groups that we work closely with, every project where we're touching the stadium, especially to the magnitude of which we're touching the south end zone right now, we work with a local historical preservation consultant to bring in and really be by our side for the necessary period during the design process to make sure that the properties of which are designating the stadium and the venue a historic landmark are being adhered to. And, we're not doing anything, one, that changes the thread or fabric of what's made the stadium what it is, what gave it its historical designation. back in the 80s. But two, also just to make sure we're not, even if we can put something somewhere, that we're doing it, again, thoughtful, intentional. I come back to that, in a thoughtful and intentional manner. How are we blending concrete work, to make sure that it's not sticking out like something that doesn't belong, right? If we are doing something that may need to be undone someday, how are we doing it so that it's reversible? Different pieces like that. So certainly our local preservation consultant is one key stop along the journey. We also work here really closely with the Pasadena Heritage and the folks over at Pasadena Heritage. Really for all of these projects that we just mentioned, whether it be the South End Zone or the video board replacement or the seating replacement project, we've already started having conversations with them relative to what the future holds from that standpoint. That's a group that's super important here in this community, making sure that the community's historical assets, the city of Pasadena's historical assets, maintain their integrity. And when you look at the laundry list of, we just talked about all the events that we host. We'd probably need like 2 more podcasts to talk about all the historical properties around the city of Pasadena. But we're really thankful for them also approaching us in a thoughtful and intentional manner to have these conversations, to make sure that what we are doing is being done in a reasonable manner. And then, of course, we go through all, just like any other venue, the city planning process and the historical folks through the city planning departments as well, to make sure that, again, before we break ground, we have a thoughtful plan that's ready to be delivered intentionally, and is going to maintain the integrity of what's important to us, and that's in being a national historic landmark. There aren't many venues in the country that can say they hold on to that designation, and there are many venues in the country who have held that designation and let it slip through the cracks, and that's just not that's a non-negotiable for us. That's not something we're willing to move upon.
And that's a cool journey that Derek mentioned too, because everybody that's a part of that journey, he mentioned a bunch of the preservation groups and the consultants that we work with. Everybody wants the same thing. They just don't want to let go of what it is in all of our minds, right? And that's a really cool thing to kind of try to wrap in and move forward in a way that evolves the venue and doesn't allow us to think of it any differently. And it makes the projects, yes, a little bit longer when you got to move the door, you got to move the window front, whatever it is. But to have everybody kind of aligned and in generality pulling in the same direction, it makes for a really positive outcome 99% of the time. So, we're excited in this community with all the historic designations around Pasadena and the LA area and what they mean to people. I think if you respect where these places have come from, you, for the most part, get to the finish line that you need to with the appropriateness of whatever said project is. And it's nice to have a ton of people in the huddle with us that want to see this done for the Rose Bowl for the right way, not regardless of the Olympics coming, regardless of what happens to New Year's Day football, regardless of how college football evolves or Pokemon evolves or whatever. They want this for the Rose Bowl because, it is going to this generation that we will never meet. Yeah. So how do you steward that and then hand it off in a way that is meaningful? And whether it's the two of us that work for the staff at the Rose Bowl and actually have a hands-on stewardship of these projects, or people that are tax-paying residents, it's all the same. And that's a really neat feeling to have around this town and around this region for the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. I would just comment that, it is so much more difficult, but it's always worth it, right?
Yes.
When you go through that process and you get to then and you see what you've done.
Yeah, if I could extend that just a little bit, it makes us better. To be quite honest with you, it makes us think of things differently. It makes us analyze, different parts of a renovation perhaps differently. And the end product is, we typically find 9 times out of 10 we're better off for anyway. So
we always describe it as when you talk about a historical renovation versus doing a ground up build or something like that, it's equated to if you found the burnt out shell of a 57 Chevy and you said, hey, put this back together and make it beautiful, versus a Honda Civic coming off the assembly line. It's like there's no comparison here of what's happening. And then also on top of that, there's 4 or 5 organizations that want to check you every single step of the way.
Yeah.
So again, it's harder, but when it's done, it's beautiful. It evokes
right.
more emotion. It's something that people want to be a part of.
That's right.
So kudos to you guys for doing that and going through that. But now thinking about all this amazing work that needs to be done, you guys taking this upon yourselves to make sure we have this beautiful stadium for our community. How do you fund something like that? How do you go through the process of, where is the money coming from? Is the city paying for it? Is it donors? How does that work?
It's all the above.
Okay.
Public-private partnerships, multimedia rights, activities, government, state, federal funding, and obviously the private philanthropy is probably the most direct line to it. But
Shout out to any of your big donors.
we'll get there for sure. Yeah, I'm still thinking through. They're all worthy of it, so I don't leave anybody out. But the Rose Bowl Legacy Foundation is our 501c3 nonprofit. It was founded in 2010 because of the old renovation, the renovation that's just 10, 15 years old now, had a bit of a shortfall. So they needed to close that delta. So they founded a nonprofit that was really driven by civic philanthropy, modeled after one in Omaha, Nebraska with all the Berkshire Hathaway people and whatnot. And a lot of local people stepped up to help fund that gap. What that did, I think, is it proved we're in a really unique situation where we have a nonprofit organization that supports a publicly owned building. That's it's not asking people to give money to City Hall, but it's pretty darn close when you talk about, all the nonprofit opportunities that not just Pasadena has per capita, but, just nonprofit in general. What do we all give money to? What tugs on our heartstrings? What's important to us? But what those original 25 or so donors proved in 2010 when they funded that gap on the first renovation project is that there's this generational emotional connectivity to a place. And for families, Derek mentioned, these people come in, they want to go to section 19, row 66, seat 12. They know exactly what happened there. It really flipped the light switch on for us, not just with donors around the country, but with our elected officials, with our partners. Hey, how do we drip this emotional thought process out of all these people, regardless of what their level of contribution could or should be? And it's always imperfect. We never choose to have it all figured out. But I think we went from that original 25 or so donors hyper locally to about 5,000 nationally. Oh, wow. And they're everywhere from Ann Arbor, Michigan, Columbus, Ohio, Austin, Texas. Our elected officials are engaged. We have a pretty aggressive grant program that we look at for funding throughout state and federal sources. But it's always this cultivation period of, how do we find what's next? What do we do if a COVID hits and you got to lock the gates for a certain period of time? What do you do if there's, the Eaton fire? The Eaton fire, what we did after the Eaton fire for 3.5, 4 weeks was probably our most important event ever. That's right. When we turned into a command center for first responders, almost 5,000 of them there was a McDonald's, there was a barbershop, our most important event ever. Yeah. And, so when you start taking the common denominator of all those different events, so to speak, you get this cathedral, you said earlier, that everybody wants to be a part of. And that results in $1 here, $1 million there, a Senate bill signed into a law there, whatever it might be. And before you know it, you start stacking up these wins that help Derek, myself, and our staff really clear the way to go do a renovation in the South End Zone project, or to have our 25th displacement event as we expand upon our music festival business. And we actually have more music events than we have sporting events every year, which not a lot of people know. But all these things kind of work together. And if one is out of step, it doesn't mean it holds us back. But if one of those is out of step, it certainly gets the attention of somebody in Columbus, Ohio, or Austin, Texas, because they want to know the Rose Bowl is healthy and thriving for everything beyond, what we're looking at in our near view mirror right now, up to and through the Olympics. So funding, how do we get funding? I get the question a lot, like, what is our donor profile? Our donor profile is the 4 of us. It's the person walking on the street. It's the person leaving a Texas Longhorn game, whatever it might be. And those are just the football people, right? When you start talking to this community specifically about economic impact and job creation and what the stadium does for our hotel and retail partners, it is a lightning rod that creates this ripple effect throughout the Pasadena and Southern California communities. So it's great that people want to walk up and give us a donation check to support the South End Zone Field Club or the video board or the seat enhancements, whatever those projects might be. They're also supporting it by coming to an event and buying a hot dog because of Senate Bill 96. They're also supporting it by going to the flea market the second Sunday of every month, because that flea market has been just an absolute staple of ours going back to the 60s. So funding is always a weird model. It's a mix of all these, yes, obviously in-your-face, nonprofit-oriented, state, federally funded things, but anybody that walks through those gates is a funder of the Rose Bowl. And that's incredibly important to us, and we treat each person like they are of that importance level to get us to that next step. So it's been a fun ride, but it is not, we don't have an alumni base. We do not have that type of group to look into like you would at a university or a hospital. But like you said, we're a cathedral, and there's a lot of people in that group that want to call it that, look at that, share it, whether they're in Vermont or Southern California.
Well, speaking of Southern California, you mentioned like the profile of this group being potential donors. Let's just say there is someone walking the street. Just
Did you bring your checkbook? Is that what
You too.
I have to. It's my job to ask, guys.
I do. Well, let's just say there is someone walking just outside the office right now. They know the Rose Bowl. They know it's needing improvements. They want to support. What would be your number one piece of advice about how they can support? Is it just simply going to a game? Like, how can the average person pitch in and make sure that the stadium moves forward in the right direction?
I spoke to a community group late last week, and it was ironically a group of local neighbors, community members to the stadium. And the two takeaways I gave them, regardless of their propensity to give or their willingness to buy a brick or attend an event, was two things. I wanted them to know how much the stadium gives back to the community, the surrounding community, and I wanted them to know that we are giving every ounce of our thoughtfulness, our intention, et cetera, to maintain it as this historic element that we all know. Whether you call it National Historic Landmark, the word historic is just, I think, used in generality. Those are the two things I wanted them to walk away from. Now, that what we gave them, the information we gave them underneath those 2 bullet points, filled in all the gaps on, how to give, the Lasting Legacy Capital Campaign, what the foundation is, what Derek's working on with the End Zone Club, the music festivals. We gave them all that information, but we wanted them walking out of there with 2 notes of pride that they could carry back into their next glass of wine with their neighbor, or their next Little League game when they're walking in the car with their kid and their friend. I don't think enough people, I think people appreciate the Rose Bowl. I don't think they understand fully just the incredible positive 365 24/7 element of it that it gives back to the community. The easy ones are the ones that we see on TV, and those are the ones that people always want to talk about. But we started this podcast talking about Pokémon, right? And the demographic that grabs their attention. They don't care about January 1st necessarily. And I think as I walked away from that group of community members and neighbors, that's the easiest way to give, is to become an advocate and talk through, hey, have you heard what they're doing over there? Do you know why they're doing it? How awesome is this? Oh yeah, by the way, there's Guns N' Roses coming and Noah Khan and all this good stuff. Like, that's the natural stuff that you're going to see and hear on the radio and TV and whatnot. But I think that breeds this civic pride that the Rose Bowl has always had, going back 103 plus years. That the more we can grow that through our storytelling and through people just wanting to be positive and understanding the positivity of that space, not the traffic patterns, not the challenges of a 103-year-old venue. You're going to get that at Fenway Park and Wrigley Field, et cetera. But we still love those places, right? So we want people to understand and feel that, and be able to illustrate that to their colleagues and their friends, specifically in Pasadena, but throughout the Southern California region and nationally. We want them to have that knowledge of it. And if they end up giving, great. If they end up talking to an elected official, great. If they end up buying a brick, awesome. But enjoying it and being a positive advocate, that's kind of what kicks it down the road and gets it to that next step. Our South End Zone project that our staff is putting on is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be awesome. Doesn't mean some people aren't going to like it, right? but we want them to appreciate the positivity that's coming from that venue and where it was, where it is now, where it's going.
Yeah.
And if they can illustrate that and feel warm and fuzzy about it, we've done our job.
Yeah.
I think too, we talked about vibrancy a little bit earlier, and how the venue today is as vibrant as it's ever been. And when you think about what gives it its vibrancy, it's the people, right?
Yeah.
You can host any event that you choose, or what have you, but people coming to the stadium, coming into the gates, coming and having a meal at Brookside, over at the clubhouse at Brookside restaurant, or playing a round of golf, coming to the Egg Bowl or Bunny Brunch that we're hosting coming up here in April. People coming into the stadium gates is what gives it the vibrancy. As Dean said, just coming in allows you to either let us tell you the story of the stadium, or let you kind of learn for yourself, the story of the stadium, just by allowing it to evoke the emotion and the grandeur within you, and kind of think back to that, whether it's the first Super Bowl halftime show that really kind of put halftime shows on the map, and all of the various events it's hosted in its history.
Yeah. And it is so easy. I mean, being local and doing the loop and running and cycling and being there, it is so easy to take it for granted.
Yeah.
Because after a while, you're like, this is just in my backyard.
right.
It is what it is. I don't even think about it anymore. And that's why I love what we're doing in this podcast, because it's the reminder of, oh, wow, we are so lucky to have this here. But you just forget about it after a while. I think people that are coming in, they see that. They see how special it is. I think it's hard when you're local to keep that appreciation up, because it's just, you take it for granted.
Sure.
It's right there in your backyard, and it is what it is.
That's right.
So, especially I love the philanthropic side, the amount of charity events that I've been there, out on the field, the Bolton's Throwdown, all the different ones are so great. And that's another big piece that I think a lot of people don't see, right? Again, they think of football, but they don't see all those little events and all the good it's doing for the community, things like that.
That's right.
I did want to circle back around to the Olympics just one more time, because it's such a big topic right now. We've got another podcast just around the Olympics and the carb-free Olympics and everything that you're talking about. What is the overall role? We mentioned soccer. How is the Rose Bowl going to stand out in 2028 for the Olympics?
Well, I think the entire Arroyo is going to be alive
Okay.
for the Olympics, with the Rose Bowl Aquatic Center announced as the Olympic diving venue. Certainly that's going to be a big piece in what's happening in the city of Pasadena, but also the Rose Bowl too. So, it's going to be a really interesting runway here as we see the pieces get put together. We just sat with some of the LA 28 staff for a lunch last week, and they were talking about the Olympics over in Italy and Milano that just wrapped up. And it was actually interesting. I learned a stat that I was kind of curious about. I was curious to learn how many individuals on the local organizing committee were lifetime Olympic employees effectively, and how many just jump from local organizing committee to local organizing committee, so forth. And they said it was a much higher percentage than I thought it would be. There's several, hundreds of people, it sounded like.
That's cool.
They kind of come on. So we're really excited for the 26 Winter Games to wrap up, because it seems like to us that's when planning really starts in earnest for the 28 games. So, I think our teams, from an operational standpoint, are starting to attend different security briefings, different security activities. I know we collaborate with the local venues quite a bit too. We were just our operations team was just over at the Coliseum for a security exercise that they put on with local law enforcement agencies. So again, just ingratiating ourselves to the staff and the different operating bodies that come in and make part of that. But I think you're going to see the Arroyo just morph into something that, quite honestly, it's a picture I can't even paint right now relative to how many people are going to be coming down. We've talked as the Arroyo, car-free, but does it become a off-site parking location for other venues, whether that be Dodger Stadium or Crypto.com Arena or BMO Stadium, whatever it may be. But we think it's going to be 24/7, 365 activation once we get to July of 2028. And then, of course, our role as the soccer venue, really cut and dry. And that's why part of why we're so excited for it is we are a soccer venue, whether it was last
Business
year's
as usual
Club
for
World
that part,
Cup, that's right, or the various World Cups we've hosted. We know a thing or two about that. We have the hands down, in my humble opinion, the best grounds crew in the country, if not world.
No question.
Miguel Yepes and his team that keep that playing surface in Cadillac shape year round. So I know he's really excited to show off his and his team's skills when the Olympics come to town. But yeah, I think it's going to be a couple of weeks of inundation in and around the Arroyo. I think the city's going to come alive to a whole new level. I think when you talk about the economic impact of an event, the Olympics is going to yield an unfathomable benefit to the city and local community.
Yeah. Now, what was the stat from Chris mentioned? Is it's how many Super Bowls per day?
Oh my
for 2
God,
weeks?
it's like
Super Bowl day.
150 Super Bowls or
Yeah,
something.
that's right.
The stat of the amount of people descending
insane.
on
It's
LA.
crazy, yeah.
It's insane, and it's one thing to think about the Super Bowls in a day that we'll have with soccer events, but then as you guys are alluding to, that's not only happening in Pasadena, that's happening in Carson and downtown LA and Englewood and
Every
and
day.
Westwood, and it just all over. My mind is trying to fathom what that looks like, but it'll be fun. Gear up.
No, for sure. 100 Super Bowls a day. It's just
No big deal.
Something
No
like
big
that.
deal.
Yeah, it'll be
But
fine.
no, the scale is really incredible. I think Chris said it was like $7 billion altogether is how much funding has to come together for the Olympics, and the city of LA's budget is like 11 billion, and it's like, okay, well, that's
Yeah, I think we're really trying to work intentionally with the local organizing group here in LA 28 right now to understand what are your needs. Certainly we know power, phone lines, et cetera, but I think what we'll see throughout Olympic venues, a lot of overlay come in, and so we're trying to collaborate right now upon what are different pieces of overlay that you're bringing in to our venue that we might want to sit down and have conversations with relative to, hey, how do we co-fund this to make it into a permanent fixture, and so that not only individuals can enjoy it during 2028, but for years beyond that. too.
Yeah, the things that you can having like that lasting legacy from the
Exactly.
Olympics would
Exactly.
be huge.
That's
That's one of our episodes called the Festival Trail. Very similar.
Yeah.
How do we create a pedestrian path that connects all the venues?
Yeah.
That stays afterwards. So we
That's
have a
right.
pedestrian path where we can get around LA. Amazingly, the thought of it is
Yeah, we're
is
so
wonderful.
excited. Not to interrupt, but we're excited for those lasting impacts too. And one of the pieces we talked about earlier is again being nestled into this idealistic community. It's not easy to get to the stadium,
Yeah.
and we'll all raise our hands and say that until you think about the multitude of options that you have available. The A-line and its connectivity from Long Beach to Pomona and probably beyond by that point, I'd imagine. And what that allows, not just for the Olympics, but every day, the shuttle programs that we run from Old Pasadena. By the way, it's also about a 25-minute walk, 30-minute walk from the Memorial Park station, 25 minutes from our shuttle lot down to the stadium. And it's not, it's a beautiful walk, too.
Yeah.
You're walking by the Gamble House, and you just get to feel the historic nature of the city. And so, you asked earlier, what are our priorities as a venue? One of our big priorities is making sure we're telling the right story relative to, it can be challenging to get to our venue unless you don't want it to be challenging. And there's, a million ways to get down to the
A
stadium.
bunch of lime scooters, and you're good.
That's right. That's right. We'll let you take that one. We'll let you take that one to a community forum.
Stacked up nicely in the parking areas.
You guys want to talk about the museum?
Heck
Oh
yeah.
man, Dean, you talk about it. That's
Yes.
Dean's baby, but if I can just kind of prelude it to say,
Because I don't think the audience knows there's a.
oh my
museum
gosh,
up
and
there.
this place is Cadillac, and it's one of those places that, as I tease into it for Dean, I talked about having chills earlier when you're talking about all of the performers and the people that come into our venue and just kind of are mesmerized by what happens. This room that he's about to describe is this. It's the history of the Rose Bowl Stadium encapsulated into, maybe 400 square feet. And I get chills, absolute chills every day when I walk into the room. But tell us a little bit about it.
400 square feet, by the way, which is one of the two original locker rooms. So athletes were a lot smaller back then.
Yeah.
I think Penn State only brought 13 guys to the first game. Twofold. The space that you all are talking about is our 1922 locker room museum. It opened in 2017 thanks to donor gifts. And the idea behind that room was let's take this original locker room that needed preservation and needed love. You couldn't really bring tour groups in there. We have a great tour program the last Friday of every month for the listeners out there that want to check out the stadium. But we had this space. You couldn't even take patrons into an original space of the venue. That was a huge issue. Mm-hmm. And the mission of the foundation is to preserve, protect, and enhance the venue for future. So it was right on target for us. So we went and raised the money from a few individuals, and we turned this locker room space. We shored it up, but it became this museum that was originally actually meant to be a showroom for a larger museum. We were kicking the tires. Did the financial pro formas on a 30,000 square foot version of it in Lot F, or one of the parking lots. And the showroom opened, and it kind of shoehorns a little bit of everything in our history, from the moments that locker room was used for 6 years, to the music history, to Army Navy, to UCLA, to the Rose Bowl game, et cetera. And when the space opened, it kind of hit us across the nose, like, gosh, why would we want to worry about the HVAC breaking in a 30,000 square foot museum on a Wednesday? We need to worry about the HVAC in here. Yeah. Why would we want to worry about the scan rate on a Tuesday? So this little showroom became the museum for the larger museum, which is the stadium itself. Yeah. And we started looking at the stadium through a different lens as this walking museum. Like, all right, now we have this 1922 locker room space, which is at Tunnel 15A if you're in the stadium. What do we do with the rest of the property? And statues came out of it. Now we have 6 statues on the property. Historical markers came out of it. We have about 10 of those, and we're adding. We actually have the State High School Football Hall of Fame for the state of California. That's at Tunnel 20. And it's actually open to all ticketed patrons at any event to go in there if you're not part of our tour program. So the venue itself, I think the ultimate goal is to, if the 4 of us go and we all come in 4 different tunnels, 4 different gates, can we all take something away from it other than our ticket stub, which you don't even take those anymore. They're digital. Yeah. But can we all take something away? Did we learn something? What happened here? Peyton Manning took his first snaps here. Eddie Robinson and Grambling coached here. Mm-hmm. John Cooper is the only coach to coach in 4 Rose Bowl games for 4 different schools, et cetera, et cetera. And that's actually a mechanism we use to translate philanthropy in a way where we would go to donors in the Columbus, Ohio area. Sorry, Ann Arbor, I keep calling out Columbus. Yeah. But go to the donors in Columbus and talk about, hey, we have this vision for this historical marker for Coach John Cooper, who was huge Ohio State Buckeye coach, as well as Arizona State and UCLA and I think Oregon State, if I'm remembering right. Can you help us fund this historical marker? It's educational. It'll fund the marker, but the net benefit of that funding goes to support infrastructure improvements that Derek and his team work on. So out of this 1922 400 square foot locker room turned museum, originally a showroom, came this whole idea of, hey, how do we fund the whole campus, but also fund these infrastructure improvement projects? Mm-hmm. And it became a catalyst for the Rose Bowl Legacy Foundation to kind of grow into that donor base of 5,000 people, because now we could not just pull on their heartstrings because they love the Rose Bowl, we could pull on their heartstrings because they liked Peyton Manning or they liked California high school football. And it almost became this convening mechanism for our patrons as well to now enjoy things that didn't previously exist.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, that I've been in the museum, and it really is a special place, and you leave just being like, wow. And I think that is the unique thing that I hear a lot of people say, how are you going to bring the Rose Bowl up to the Intuit Dome level and things like that? And I think the answer is absolutely not. Yeah. Like, we're not trying to be the Intuit Dome, because there's nothing special about that. Like, the magic of the Rose Bowl is the history that you're talking about. That's really what makes it special. So that idea of those comparisons, there is no comparison at all. Yeah. You say, oh, world-class facility, it's different. There's two different things.
We used to talk about, and this is pre Derek and I and the leadership of our CEO Jens Wyden, pre a lot of our regime. We used to talk about ourselves by remembering the rally cry of the Orange Bowl Stadium, which is now a bronze plaque in the Marlins ballpark, I think, out in the Miami area. They kept a plaque where it used to be. It's not there anymore. And it was like this rallying cry of fear that we would instill into the general public. Hey, we have to protect it or we become the Orange Bowl. And I think that was probably the right tone for where we were in that moment of time. Where we are now is we are Augusta National. We are Fenway Park. We are Wrigley Field. And each of those places have these incredibly unique aspects of them that people appreciate on a very intimate, emotional, indescribable level. So yeah, we're not trying to be something that we're not. Absolutely not. But it also doesn't mean we stand flat-footed every day.
That's right.
And
That's right. No, it's we will always be the Rose Bowl Stadium. There's a number of incredible venues here in the LA area, but quite frankly, very few of them. The Coliseum certainly a venue of incredible historic significance as well. But between us and the Coliseum, we're about as good as it gets when you talk about just the ability to walk into the gates and idealize on what's come before you. And while we'll continue to make sure we're advancing and you can connect to your cell phone and you have the latest, greatest concession items in the venue or what have you, but we'll never do anything that compromises what makes the fabric of what makes the Rose Bowl as special as it is.
Mm-hmm. I think, that leads me to one of my final questions is
it the lightning round?
Well, we're getting there.
Okay.
America Stadium.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is why the Rose Bowl is America's Stadium. Mm-hmm. Just all of the cultural history of the country somehow woven into this one place for 100 plus years.
Yep.
I mean, is that the message you take to the donors nationally? It's like, you might not live in Pasadena, but you're a part of this place.
Yeah, 100%. It's in our DNA. There's something here for everybody. Again, and what do we do moving forward? What do we do for those people who is their first time there? Might be their last time as well. Mm-hmm. America's Stadium is special to us because I think it's special to Pasadenans because it identifies that there is something bigger here in their backyard that we should all probably appreciate a little bit stronger and more as we kind of lean into our future. But for our mayor, Victor Gordo, says it a lot, Pasadena is the center of the universe.
Yeah.
We have JPL, we have Caltech,
right.
we have the Rose Bowl. There's not many 140,000 person cities in the country that can lay claim to all those things. That's a pretty neat thing. So, it's America's Stadium, but I think it also goes beyond these domestic borders. We had a few months back, one of our colleagues at the stadium got the call that a Brazilian World Cup alum from '94 was coming through LA and he wanted to bring his family by the stadium. Well, that Brazilian soccer alum ended up being Dunga, who was the captain of the team in '94. And our colleague Brian brought him through, gave him a tour, and Dunga teared up, cried emotionally for to be able to share it with his family in 2025 after kind of going through that as an ultimate competitor in '94. That's what it does to people. Yeah. And it's America's Stadium, but I think that's what probably makes us most excited for these Olympic Games is, we know we're going to be ready for it and it's going to be awesome, hands down. It's just going to expose us to so many people that are never going to have that hair stand up in your arm feeling again in their life. We're going to give it to them those few days they're in Pasadena.
It's going to be a big shot in the arm for you guys. It's going to be great.
No doubt.
Absolutely.
Lightning round?
Lightning round.
Oh.
You guys ready?
I think
we
so.
go.
Let's do it.
First or favorite memory of the Rose Bowl?
You get to go first.
Make Dedan go first every time.
My favorite memory of the Rose Bowl, I think, is seeing it through my kids' eyes because they don't know it the way that we all know it, right? Or my wife knows it. And so that the day after the game is the day after the Rose Bowl game on January 2nd. It's usually kind of a lower key staff day, and we've made it a family tradition to kind of bring our kids out, and there's a lot of things going on there. A lot of people running through the confetti from 24 hours prior. Yeah. My son and daughter and their friends are having this epic kickball game on the goal line amidst the Indiana end zone. Right? And I'm like, what is going on right now? Yeah. And they have zero, they know where they're at, but they don't know where they're at. Right. Yeah. And I think that's I think that's my favorite memory that keeps kind of perpetuating itself is kind of seeing it through their eyes. And one day they'll know it for something bigger like we do. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go with, well, first of all, I grew up in upstate New York, and on January 1st, it was typically, -3 degrees, and it was snowing outside, and you're a Northeasterner. And so, I always woke up, turned on the Rose Parade, watched with my mom, and of course watched the game, and just, kind of mesmerized upon what was happening in Pasadena. It looked like this foreign land. It was sunny. It was beautiful. And then to come out to California, some 9 years ago now or so, my first event here, I don't know how I go with anything else. It was a UCLA football game against Texas A&M. And Texas A&M went up big in the fourth quarter, and Josh Rosen orchestrated a comeback for the ages. And I said, is every football game like this? This is awesome. But I think that was, probably a pretty special moment. I'm sorry you didn't ask for two, but you get two. Yeah. I think, the concerts, I remember Coldplay, I think was my first concert, and just the magic of a concert inside the stadium. I don't know what tees it off more for me than any other concert I've been to at any other venue in the country. But it's just special.
Yeah. Sports and music are like maybe the last two things in this world that bring people together the way that they do.
Yeah, that's well said.
And when you pair it with a place like the Rose Bowl, it's undeniable.
Yeah. Well, that's a great segue into the next one, which is, what is one dream event that you'd like to bring to the Rose Bowl, artist you'd like to host at the Rose Bowl, an event you'd like to see there?
I'd like to see a comedian in there.
That's a good one. I was wondering.
I don't know, like as you look at our DNA and our timeline, I don't know that we've had comedians open for musicians before, and I don't know that we've ever had a comedian. But I think there's only a certain amount of performers, musically, comedically, whatever, that can fill the venue the way we see the venue filled in our minds. Like, not everybody's going to come to U2 in 2009 when they played the Round and did their 360 tour. But I think that's the love we have for the flexibility of this new $30 million South End Zone space is it allows us to kind of create an internal amphitheater within the venue itself. And maybe you can get some exploratory responses on things like comedy or smaller, more intimate music shows and symphonies and things of that nature, because Derek referenced it in his Coldplay answer. Like, musically, or acoustically rather, we feel like we're one of the best venues out there.
Yeah.
And that will always carry forward. So now how do we take these new projects like we're doing with this field club and turn them into that, but maybe on a smaller level? So I'd like to see comedy. I like to laugh.
Love it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. This is a tough one. There's so many pieces out here you could say. Then NHL Winter Classic. There was one in the Stadium Series.
Yeah.
I hesitate saying this because now Jens is going to call us when we get back and say, okay, we'll go get it.
Yeah.
But I think the NHL Winter Classic would just be a one-of-one event, and that technology has come so far. I think they played it in Miami.
Oh,
this year. They played
Florida
one in
Panthers.
Tampa.
Yeah.
Which oddly, I think they played one in Tampa Bay as well. And the temperature, the Tampa one, was colder than the last 5 ones they've done in the Northeast or something. So that's kind of wild. But I think the magic of the one-of-one events at the stadium, of which I'd consider that certainly one of those, is pretty amps the place up a little bit. And it's what we do. We do different things. So it would be fun.
I love it. I love that you said comedy, because I went to the Great Outdoor Canadian Comedy Fest. It was up in Ottawa, and I came back, and this was after we had walked, and I ChatGPT'd an entire business plan for a comedy festival at the Rose Bowl. I'm like, we have to have this at the Rose Bowl.
Come on.
Because it was Nate Bargatze. It was unbelievable. It was all outdoors, lawn
That's awesome.
chairs. It was a really fantastic event.
That's cool.
So, good stuff. All right, we'll wrap it up here. One more question. What does success look like for you guys in 2040? You're looking out. You're about to pass the torch. You're leaving the stadium.
For us personally, or the venue?
I think personally in the venue. Either one.
I feel like we get a little bit of this vibe and feeling every day, every week, every event, whatever. The industry that Derek and I are in moves so quickly, and it's always on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. We're actually going through some staff exercises now to just kind of politely check each other, pump the brakes a little bit, slow down, celebrate wins, plan the next one. It's okay to feel good about stuff. It's okay to feel bad about stuff. What do you leave on the table? How do we get better?
Yeah.
I think in 2040, irregardless of professional, paycheck, where we're at that point, it's knowing that we kind of left it a lot better, not just better, a lot better than we found it. And that's a very cliche thing to say, but I think knowing, we just talked for an hour on like just the uniqueness of how we do these renovation projects, capital projects. There's so much that goes into it. There's so much that goes into an event like Pokémon or a concert or a football game or a South End Zone renovation project. So I think for me, it's just kind of being able to look back and knowing that we got a ton of wins stacked on top of each other, but also kind of internalizing, knowing maybe for a future memoir down the road, like what we all had to battle to get those done.
Yeah, I think, 2040.
Mm-hmm.
It's about 15 years from now. The venue will then be 118 years
That'd
young.
be awesome.
Which is
Be pretty
insane, which there's no doubt it'll be 118 years young at some point. But I think at that point, it's reflecting upon the carefully cultivated projects that we've executed to, again, all due respect to Intuit Dome, it's a fine venue. I've been there many times. I enjoy going there. But to look back and say, we're not the Intuit Dome, and that's okay because we're the Rose Bowl, and we've done a series of things to strengthen it over the years. I love the phrase incremental is monumental, and I think that's hard for some people because Dean and I and the whole team we're go people, and sometimes it's difficult to slam on the brakes and say, hey, a little bit of progress, it can be a lot of bit of progress, especially when you stack it up over 15 years. So, in 2040, I hope to look back and see that we've really done our best to thoughtfully splash in enough renovations and operational improvements to the venue that we know for darn sure that 15 years from then, stadium's going to be as healthy as it's ever been.
Last part here, if somebody wants to be a part of the legacy, if they want to help out any specific way, they should reach out to you, Dedan, to jump in and be involved.
The best way to do it right now, we are in the middle of a multi-project, multi-year, $80 million capital campaign titled Lasting Legacy, actually. I know we've used that a few times in this interview. So you can go online to rosebowllastinglegacy.com. It'll tell you about each of the 8 projects, from the refurbishment of our historic Rose Bowl sign to the South End Zone Club and the things we haven't even gotten to yet. But rosebowllastinglegacy.com is on there. And for anybody that wants to give, rosebowllegacyfoundation.org is the site. So, but you can give through either sites. One just kind of talks about where we are and where we're headed. So appreciate anybody out there that wants to provide something special to what we think is a very special future.
Just one $80 million check. Right?
Well, it depends what Chris gives today.
Yeah,
okay.
We'll see what Chris
We're a little
chips
bit
in first.
A little bit closer to goal because of him today. No.
All right, guys. Well, Derek, Dedan, thank you so much for coming in and joining us. I think that was a fantastic conversation. And as things progress, hopefully we'll get you back on in 24 months, see where we're at.
Love it. Awesome. Love it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.